I am a businesswoman who knows best how to go with the flow. At my mother's funeral, the CEO scumbag father who was just last night cozying up to his mistress wept bitterly. I crafted an image of him as a deeply devoted man. It left him trapped, forever too ashamed to remarry. Privately, he always favored his illegitimate children, but in front of the media, he insisted on playing the doting father to me. So I built an image of him as a loving man. This ensured that until his death, he never found the chance to reveal those illegitimate siblings of mine. They were jealous of how the company thrived under my control and dragged me to court with a lawsuit. I couldn't help but chuckle softly, looking innocently at my foolish younger siblings. Who are you guys? My memories of mother are always hazy. I only remember that in the 2 months before she passed, she suddenly treated me very well. She began planning everything for me. When I was a child, I didn't understand my mother. But only after I grew into a businesswoman like her did I finally comprehend. Business is all about profit. At first, she didn't want to invest too much emotion in useless pawns. But before she died, she suddenly realized that I, her useless daughter, would be the only pawn left in her hand. During that time, she taught me how to conduct myself, how to scheme, and how to exchange favors. She also taught me how to endure under the hands of my father and his mistress, to endure and endure, until one day, unexpectedly, I could tear off a large, bloody chunk from them. Then she died. She died so suddenly, she didn't even have time to leave any extra words. I stayed by her bedside, watching the rise and fall of her chest slowly cease. I opened my mouth, wanting to call her mom, but no matter how hard I tried, not a single sound came out. Because I knew she would never hear again. That year, I was 14. I didn't cry or make a fuss, I just sat quietly by the hospital bed. Until dawn, when my father hurried in from outside. Seeing me sitting alone, he was taken aback. "You're alone?" The moment he stepped through the door, I caught the strong scent of rose perfume on him. The fragrance wasn't cheap, yet it still made me want to vomit. I carefully concealed the disgust in my eyes, calmly looked up at him, then nodded. Mother had taught me that dogs that bite don't bark. If I wanted to bite, I couldn't bark. If I barked, I'd never get to bite anyone. I wanted to be that dog that bites. He looked at me, a rare flicker of pity in his eyes, then silently sighed. "Let's go." I followed him without a word. 7 days later, at Mother's funeral, he appeared before everyone in a black suit, with me trailing behind him. In front of the media cameras, he trembled as he touched his mother's coffin, his face pale and tears streaming uncontrollably. A look of utter despair, as if his heart had died. Many of the guests present couldn't help but quietly wipe away tears. After the funeral, I shared a car with him, but inadvertently caught a glimpse of his phone screen. He was chatting with a woman saved in his contacts as Misty. "Misty, back from that woman's funeral?" Yeah. "Misty, I've been simmering fish ma chicken ribs for 3 hours, almost ready. Want to come over for dinner later?" He hesitated for a moment. "Her daughter is right next to me, just came back from the funeral. Not convenient tonight." "Misty, I'm getting mad, not talking to you anymore." The car kept moving forward. I quietly withdrew my gaze and looked up at the scenery outside the window. A wave of grievance welled up inside me, but I refused to let myself cry. Suddenly, his voice sounded in my ear. "Zoe, do you think Dad is hypocritical? He clearly has no feelings for Mom, yet in front of the cameras, he acts so affectionate." A jolt hit my heart. I suddenly turned around and met his probing gaze, only then realizing he was feeling guilty and was testing me with his words. I smiled faintly. No, his eyes clearly didn't believe me. I clenched my fists secretly, feeling the sweat soaking my palms. "If at Mom's funeral you had acted indifferent, I don't know how many unscrupulous media outlets would have seized the chance to make a big fuss." "You're not wrong. In just over an hour, the company's stock has already risen by several percentage points." "I know. Our family isn't like an ordinary one. The air in the car fell silent for a moment. We stared at each other, neither of us breaking the silence. Though it was only a matter of seconds, it felt as if a century had passed, so unbearably long. Finally, Father smiled, and in his eyes, there was a faint, cold approval. You take after your mother, wise and understanding. It's a pity her temperament wasn't as gentle as yours. If only Hannah and Ethan were half as sensible as you. I breathed a sigh of relief and smiled to comfort him. The younger siblings are still little, they'll grow up to be sensible too. As I spoke, the car had already stopped at the villa's entrance. He nodded, seemingly too lazy to waste words on me, and waved me off the car. Call me if you need anything. The sedan sped away like a flash. I lowered my head and wiped the dust that had splattered onto my sleeve, the muscles at the corner of my mouth twitching. I wanted to smile, but in the end, I didn't. The wind stirred the deep black hem of my dress, like a blooming flower. Behind me, there was no one. In the days that followed, I didn't see Father's figure again. Nor did anyone take the initiative to ask about me. When my mother was alive, I was invisible. Now, I feel even more so. I'm alone in the villa where I used to live with my mother, sorting through her belongings. But there's really nothing to sort through. Over a month ago, she had already tidied everything up neatly. She threw away all the worthless things and secretly sold off the valuable jewelry and gems, converting everything into cash and depositing it into the fund she left for me. That money belongs solely to me, and I can only access it after I turn 18. No one else is allowed to touch it. Half a month later, on a stormy night, I was dozing off when my father came back with that woman. And their 2 children. It was the first time I had been so close to that woman. She wasn't exactly a stunning beauty, but my father liked her. I knew it was because he built his fortune on my mother, while that woman depended on him after he had made his fortune. I lowered my eyelids, hiding the mockery in my eyes, and slowly walked downstairs. I thought to myself, what a vain and ungrateful creature. My younger brother and sister looked up, their eyes filled with hostility fixed on me. Hannah was 11, Ethan 9. At that age, these 2 simpletons still hadn't learned to hide anything. The woman, however, smiled warmly, grabbing her children's hands and forcefully pushing them toward me. Hannah, Ethan, come meet your big sister. After saying this, she subtly watched my expression. I naturally took Hannah's hand beside me and smiled faintly. Hello. Hannah suddenly slapped my hand away and screamed as she threw herself into the woman's arms. You're born of a wicked woman, how dare you call yourself my big sister? I pretended to be at a loss, pursing my lips and standing still. Father frowned and whispered a reprimand. How do you speak to people? I smiled. It's normal for children to be shy around strangers. Hannah glared at me with resentment, her eyes like she was looking at an enemy. Without changing her shoes, she turned and clicked her way upstairs. She immediately spotted my room, sashayed back, and tugged at Dad's hand, acting all sweet. Dad, I want to live here. The atmosphere instantly turned awkward. Neither adult said a word. I knew that by not taking a stance, they were actually taking one. So I spoke up first. Fine, I'll switch to the room next door. Ethan suddenly said, No, I want to live next to my sister. I silently smirked. Then I'll take the room next to that one. Hilarious. What's the big deal about losing 2 rooms? The things they can't snatch away, I still have firmly in my grasp, and that's enough. Ethan shook his head desperately in that woman's arms. No, no. I don't want the bad sister born of a bad woman living next to me. Dad finally lost his temper and scolded, Ethan. The farce barely came to a halt. The next day, my father rarely came home. He called me into the study alone. Looking into my eyes, there was more curiosity and complexity than before. Hannah and Ethan are immature, they've wronged you, he said. I shook my head, indicating I didn't feel wronged. He then told me, The news of your mother's passing went viral in the media. The company's stock has been skyrocketing recently. I said, nowadays, netizens love this kind of thing. I think there's a lot of business to be made from it. My father raised his eyebrows and looked at me inquisitively. I knew he was waiting for me to speak, so I took the initiative to play the villain. A small funeral, just by media speculation and the audience's imagination, made so much money. Why don't we stir things up ourselves and make even more? He didn't know that behind this viral sensation was me, using the influence my mother left me to fan the flames. The idea was to let the fish taste the sweetness before biting the hook. Sure enough, after I finished speaking, my father was silent for a moment, his expression visibly shaken. But Aunt Misty, would she blame you for this? He asked if she would blame me, but what he really wanted to know was if that woman would blame him. I understood his meaning and shook my head. No, Aunt Misty probably doesn't care about these things. Besides, growing the company bigger and stronger is only beneficial to her. Why would she bother with a dead man? This time, he didn't answer immediately. Instead, he slowly lit a cigarette and took a drag. The strong smell of smoke was so close it made me want to cough. Finally, I heard him break the silence. You should come to the business dinner tomorrow, too. I nodded, doing my best to keep my expression neutral, not showing a hint of joy. I knew I had finally taken a step forward. He was letting his guard down around me, thinking I didn't hate him. He began to reassess me, seeing me as a tool to help him craft the image of a good man. Good. The next day, as promised, he took me to the business dinner, introducing me to all kinds of people. In public, he worked hard to play the role of a caring father, openly showing his gentle affection for me. Standing by his side, I went along with the act, playing the part of the cherished little princess. We gained online fame by playing the role of a devoted father and filial daughter in a wealthy family. His personal social media accounts saw a significant increase in followers. Not to mention the soaring stock value of the company. Netizens were buzzing with comments, "I'm jealous." At 14, she's already mingling with all kinds of celebrities, confident and unflustered. This must be her source of strength, right? Victor is truly a breath of fresh air. Other CEOs have countless illegitimate children, but he only has Zoe, his one and only daughter. When I have money, I'm going to buy 10 shares of their company's products. After tasting success, Victor became even more enthusiastic about taking me to various business events. Before long, his mistress finally sensed something was off. But she didn't confront him directly. Instead, she hinted around, asking when he would officially acknowledge her status. Victor, proud of his gentlemanly image, initially pretended not to hear. Later, at the dinner table, Misty couldn't hold back and asked outright. Victor's face immediately darkened. What's the rush? We already have 2 kids. Do you think I'd just leave you behind and run? Of course, Misty was anxious. She had risen to her position the same way and was worried she might be taken down in the same manner. She was anxious. So anxious she was about to smoke. But seeing Victor's grim expression, she didn't dare to continue speaking. From then on, she hated me twice as much. She could barely force a smile at me before, but now she couldn't hide her disgust at all. I understood. She thought I had badmouthed them in front of Victor, which was why they could never openly rise to power. Thinking of this, I couldn't help but sneer. Rats in the gutter were never meant to bask in the sunlight. They even found their own excuse. But so what? If they were exposed, it would damage Victor's reputation. By then, the carefully crafted image of Victor as a good father would be completely shattered. He liked his mistress, but he didn't want her to interfere with his career. So much so that, fearing media exposure, Victor wouldn't even allow his 2 illegitimate children to attend the same school as me. My dresses started getting inexplicably slashed, my jewelry began to mysteriously disappear. Dead mice appeared under my pillow, and sharp, jagged stones inexplicably accumulated on the soles of my shoes. At the dining table, dishes I was allergic to seafood, and my least favorite super spicy foods started appearing. These petty provocations, every time, I took them in stride without a word. Then I would coincidentally let Victor find out. I didn't need him to fight my battles. I only needed him to know that his mistress and the illegitimate children of his two mistresses were a bunch of impatient, useless brats, petty and small-minded. Mother said, if you can't eliminate what you don't want or obtain what you do want, then don't make a move. Unfortunately, Misty and my younger siblings didn't understand this principle. 6 years flew by in a flash. After the college entrance exam, I gave up the chance to study abroad and stayed in the country to study finance. Staying in this family was disgusting. But I hadn't taken what I wanted yet, I couldn't leave. My 20th birthday was held as scheduled. Over the years, Victor had indulged in the persona of a doting father, and for my 20th birthday, he was even more relentless. Not only did he invite all sorts of big shots to hold a grand celebration, but he also handed me $18.88 million in cash right at the coming-of-age ceremony. Dressed in a magnificent gown, my smile was bright and bold. Every now and then, I'd tug at his hand and act coquettishly, causing the spotlights to flash wildly on us, making it hard to keep my eyes open. The public always loved the spectacle of a woman being doted on by a powerful man. Whether between husband and wife or father and daughter. But when will they understand that power is only real when it's held firmly in your own hands? It's said that Hannah, upon seeing the live broadcast of my coming-of-age ceremony, was so furious she cried on the spot. She locked herself in her room and didn't come out for 3 days. Misty secretly bit her teeth almost to the point of breaking. In the end, I don't know what possessed her, but she actually took the initiative to ask me to serve as executive director at the company headquarters over the summer. I knew she had no good intentions. But in my life, I'm best at going with the flow. She begged me to take over company affairs, how could I refuse? I went to the company to take up the position as promised. Several of the company's core veterans were all Victor's relatives, closest to the center of power, and well aware of Misty and her 2 children. Naturally, they also understood who should be chosen between a privately unloved daughter and a favored mistress. They often showed me their displeasure. As the saying goes, what the father likes, the son will do even more so. Inevitably, the entire company's attitude toward me began to turn strange. But I didn't panic in the slightest, I simply focused on doing my part to the best of my ability, leaving no room for criticism. Sure enough, just a few days after I took office, the media started spreading rumors that the company was declining ever since I got involved in handling its affairs. I smiled. So that's where this guy's scheme was aimed. With Misty fanning the flames, a flood of online trolls began attacking me. Women are always troublemakers. Ever since Zoe took over at the group headquarters, the company has been going downhill. Yeah, Victor's love for his daughter is just boundless. Spoiling her is one thing, but how could he let her hold real power? One day, Victor's empire will fall into his daughter's hands. Rumors surged like a tidal wave. However, before Victor could react, I took the initiative to strike first. I posted online evidence showing that the stock value drop was due to someone secretly manipulating the market and had nothing to do with me, boldly declaring, I won't betray Dad's trust, but don't throw dirt on me indiscriminately. Meanwhile, my online army quickly mobilized, ramping up the momentum. They were just stirring the pot, but my team knew exactly how to play the public's psychology, causing a ripple effect that stirred up a storm. Soon, many gullible, indecisive bystanders were swayed by me, completely absorbed in my narrative as the sole heiress of a wealthy family, unable to pull themselves away. Overnight, I became the envy of everyone. Victor, too, became the nation's beloved father figure. When Victor called me into his office, I caught a glimpse of a faint trace of anger lurking in his eyes. I stood by his side for a long time, but he didn't take the initiative to speak or ask me to sit down. He just kept staring at the laptop in his hands. After a while, as if suddenly remembering I was there, he looked up. Did you do those things online? I admitted without hesitation. Yes. He couldn't help but sneer coldly. Who told you to do it? I asked. No one told me. It's just that someone was spreading rumors online, damaging the group's image, so I had no choice but to step in and clarify. A faint flash of anger flickered in his eyes. I'm not asking about that. I'm asking why you stirred up all that nonsense, making such a big fuss. I looked up and smiled at him. No reason. Just as the words left my mouth, he suddenly raised his hand, and immediately, a wave of heat rushed toward me. I instinctively turned aside to avoid it. The sharp sound of porcelain shattering rang out as a scalding splash of tea hit my shoulder. At that moment, I wasn't afraid. On the contrary, I couldn't help but want to laugh. My body trembled uncontrollably with excitement. After all these years of being slowly boiled like a frog in warm water, he finally felt the pain. Now, he was caught in a dilemma he couldn't escape. It's fine to openly marry, but what about the 2 children under his wife's name who are only a few years younger than me? How is he going to explain that to the public? Over these 6 years, unknowingly, he's been idolized by netizens. He's become the nation's beloved good dad, being hyped up, and once he falls, he'll be shattered to pieces. He has to keep playing along with me. I gave him a bright smile. We're grasshoppers on the same string now, so calm down. After all, we still have to act together in the future. You're the nation's beloved good dad who's gone viral online right now. You don't want the traffic to turn against you later, do you? Victor saw me so indifferent for the first time, and at the same time, my attitude infuriated him. His trembling hand pointed at me forcefully, but his lips quivered and he couldn't get a word out. Of course he should be angry. Who wouldn't be upset when the dog they raised bites back? I narrowed my eyes, expressionless as I looked down at him on the floor, then turned away without a trace of hesitation. I moved quickly, starting to take over the assets my mother left behind and setting up a new company. At the beginning, the company had little recognition, so I openly rode on Victor's popularity. When people questioned us in public, I deliberately clung to Victor's neck and acted coquettishly. My dad's willing to let me ride his coattails, what's it to you? Victor almost ground his teeth in frustration but could only chuckle dryly. The company will belong to Zoe from now on. It's just a father and daughter, what's there to hide? We were like a breath of fresh air in the world of wealthy families. Our live stream sales took off, and Victor even brought me along to do the streams together. The products we promoted sold like hotcakes, and he made a fortune. I didn't want his money. Before we started streaming, I just asked him to cooperate with my own company, letting me handle product processing. He agreed. He made a huge windfall from the live streams, but I used our partnership to start expanding new production lines and explore new areas of cooperation. The new company began to grow stronger and bigger. I knew soon I wouldn't have to answer to them anymore. If I were to walk away clean now, never crossing paths again, that would probably be the most dignified ending for us. But dignity, do they deserve it? I didn't expect the plan to go even more smoothly than I imagined. Because not long after we tore apart our relationship, Victor suddenly had a stroke. Maybe it was because I angered him. But he had no proof. During his hospital stay, his condition worsened day by day. Misty wasn't idle either. She was constantly bustling about, fussing over him. Yet I didn't visit him even once. Before she passed, Mother spent 2 months pouring all her strength into setting things up for me. I was busy leveraging the resources she left behind, and busy building myself up strong and powerful. I needed influence, I needed money. That I knew. So, I never had time to see him. Nor did I believe that offering warmth would do any good. For someone like Victor, there are no eternal feelings, only eternal calculations of interest. Some things, even if he were on his deathbed, he just couldn't let go of. Not long after, I heard that Victor had registered an overseas fund, transferring over 20 billion in assets into it. I knew that was what he was leaving to that mother and her 2 children. He wasn't planning to leave me anything. He intended, before dying, to empty the company's coffers, leaving me with nothing but an empty shell. Unfortunately for him, no matter how much he planned, he overlooked one crucial step. To save on tariffs, that money was transferred under the company's name. I quietly waited for him to die. Finally, 3 months later, the notice of Victor's critical condition reached me. When I arrived at the hospital, Misty happened to be there too. From the luxurious VIP ward came the sounds of an argument and Misty's hysterical screams. "Victor, you heartless old man. I've been with you for 18 whole years and bore you 2 children. You promised me back then, swearing that once that woman died, you'd marry me and publicly acknowledge Hannah and Ethan's identities. But more than 4 years have passed, what have you actually done? Why do you still refuse to make it public now? Do you hate me that much? Hate me so much that you've lied to me for over 20 years? Do you want our child to live their whole life like a rat hiding in the shadows?" As she spoke, she suddenly couldn't continue, lowering her head and covering her face, sobbing quietly. I calmly pushed the door open and walked in. Looking at her twisted face, I smiled. "Miss Misty, I'm sorry, but you're quite old now, and I still have to call you Miss. You and your children were never meant to see the light of day anyway." Misty screamed and lunged at me, trying to bite. The bodyguard behind me immediately stopped her. The smile on my face didn't fade. "Show some respect. My current net worth is about the same as your lover's." Misty was about to say something else, but I raised my hand and slapped her. The sharp smack echoed crisply, silencing the entire hospital room. Half of Misty's cheek instantly swelled up high. I smiled faintly. "This slap is a tribute to the dead toad your good daughter once hid under my pillow." Misty covered her face, staring at me in disbelief, as if trying to confirm why the once meek and enduring legitimate daughter dared to lay a hand on her. She seemed like she wanted to fight back. But seeing the group of tall, burly bodyguards behind me, she chickened out first. I turned around and slapped her again. "This slap is for you secretly adding shrimp to my porridge back then, knowing full well I was allergic, which landed me in the hospital hooked up to N4 for 3 days. I was about to hit her again. Victor, lying on the hospital bed, suddenly started breathing rapidly, making hoarse sounds from his throat, but he couldn't utter a single word no matter what. I lowered my gaze, looking at him with gentle pity. "I want the company inheritance." In an instant, the hatred and unwillingness flashing in his eyes almost swallowed me whole. A deeper smile crept at the corner of my eyes. "Give it to her, and she won't let you die with dignity. But give it to me, and I can." Misty snapped angrily. "You dare." I looked at her with a half-smile. "Why wouldn't I? He hasn't announced you and your 2 kids, so legally, the inheritance is mine." Misty laughed as if she'd just heard the funniest joke. Her cheek was swollen and red from my slap, her hair disheveled, and her laugh was like a ferocious demon's. There was not a trace of the refined lady she once pretended to be. Victor on the hospital bed suddenly started breathing rapidly again. I lowered my eyelids and squinted, watching him for a long moment. He lay on the sickbed, so haggard and withered that even I could barely recognize him. Without waiting for Victor's reply, I turned and left the ward. I believed Victor wouldn't die today. He had time to weigh things slowly, so I had no reason to disturb him. I knew Victor well. Because deep down, I carried his filthy blood. We were both selfish. When he was full of life, he still cared about his reputation. How could he suddenly find the courage to face the whole world on his deathbed? After closing the ward door, a hysterical scream suddenly came from behind me, Misty's. She had no real power to back her up, her face was 100 times uglier than mine. She wanted to cause a scene in the old man's ward, and I didn't stop her. Let her make a fuss all she wanted, those 2 scoundrels shouldn't sleep peacefully. After leaving the hospital, I had the driver take me home. That villa was my mother's property. While she was alive, we depended on each other there, and Victor barely came back even once a month. Later, Victor barged into my home with his mistress and illegitimate child, wiping away every trace of our life there like a bandit. When I arrived, Hannah and Ethan were at home, one barefoot on the living room sofa playing games, the other sleeping in the bedroom. I couldn't help but chuckle softly. Their mother was frantic, desperate to the point of madness, yet they all seemed heartless and indifferent. Truly, two useless fools. Hannah glanced at me, her eyes instantly filled with venomous resentment. Just as she was about to speak, I clapped my hands. Get out. She looked at me in disbelief, as if she couldn't believe that I, the cautious legitimate daughter for the past 4 years, would dare speak to her like this. What did you say? She asked, stunned. The curve of my lips deepened. I said, get out. Hannah's face flushed red immediately. On what grounds are you kicking me out? This is my home. Before she could finish, I clapped my hands again, and 2 tall, burly bodyguards barged in. Hannah was still in her pajamas, seeing 2 men suddenly enter the bedroom. Her face instantly turned crimson. Before she could say anything, she and her brother were bundled up and thrown out by the bodyguards. 3 days later, I received news of Victor's death. After hearing the news, I held my phone silently for a moment, then quickly snapped back to reality and began my next move. That overseas fund Victor had transferred was under the company's name. However, in his final will, the company's inheritance rights were left to me. I exploited this loophole and transferred all the money. When Misty found out, she nearly went mad. She didn't even have time to change her shoes. She ran over barefoot, wanting to see me, but didn't even get to meet my assistant. Still not giving up, she went online and publicly revealed the existence of herself and her 2 children, boldly announcing that she would sue me for embezzling the family's assets. The post Misty made was almost heartfelt and moving. But no matter how emotional it was, it couldn't hide the fact that she was a mistress. The netizens exploded. What a shocking twist. Victor dies, and suddenly a mistress, an illegitimate son, and an illegitimate daughter appear? So the man's words were all lies. We were all fooled by the image Victor created. What about the products I bought before? I want a refund. These days, mistresses can openly flaunt themselves online? Misty didn't give up. At 4 in the morning, she posted again. This time, she had learned her lesson and started accusing me of countless crimes. She said that after my mother died when I was 14, I had been taking care of myself. She claimed I was cold and selfish from a young age, an ungrateful wretch, and that she had worked hard to care for me for 6 years, yet I showed no gratitude and even tried to seize my younger siblings' inheritance after my father's death. She thought that this time, netizens wouldn't criticize her anymore. But the outcome was once again unexpected. The netizens began to shower me with overwhelming sympathy. Oh my God, I always thought Zoe was a pampered only daughter from a wealthy family, but I never imagined she had to struggle with a stepmother from the age of 14. For her to achieve what she has now, it's truly remarkable. She's not a delicate flower in need of protection, nor a spoiled little princess, but a queen, the leading lady. I took this opportunity to gain another wave of popularity. When it rains, it pours. Fate loves to toy with the big players. Although Misty lost the public opinion battle, she also lost the lawsuit. Because Victor never acknowledged their existence until his death, the court ruling granted her only 20% of the company's shares. But the original company was nothing more than an empty shell. That small share was worth just over $2 million. Enough for an ordinary family to live comfortably for a lifetime, but far from enough for them. Yet they stubbornly maintained their old spending habits and soon found themselves in financial trouble. I secretly instructed people to get close to my 2 useless younger siblings, turning my people into their bad company. Then I taught Hannah to take out online loans and took Ethan to Macau. Soon, they were drowning in debt. I directly ordered the debt collectors to beat them mercilessly. Hannah was blinded in both eyes, and Ethan had both legs broken. Misty looked at her ungrateful children before her, nearly crying her eyes out. At this point, she was drowning in debt, beaten by debt collectors, and her son and daughter demanded money from her. If she refused, they beat her too. After settling all these matters, I returned home. The home where I lived before I was 14. I found an old, yellowed photograph tucked under the cabinet in my bedroom. In the photo was my mother's face, already blurred in my memory. She wore light makeup, her eyes and brows betraying an undeniable weariness, holding me as a child and smiling at the camera. It's strange. It's only been 6 short years since she passed, yet I can barely recall his face. From as far back as I can remember, my mother's attitude toward me was always distant. It's hard to say exactly what it was, either warm nor cold. But don't expect anything like the close bond other mothers and daughters share. This photo was probably taken the day my mother was diagnosed with cancer. By the time she was diagnosed, it was already terminal. There was no hope. That day, she smiled at me with a gentle, sorrowful tenderness for the first time, took my hand, and asked if I wanted to go to the amusement park. That day, she took me on the carousel and the Ferris wheel, and even bought me cotton candy. I can't clearly remember her face, but I can vividly recall the taste of that cotton candy. It was strawberry-flavored, shaped like a rabbit, so sweet. Even now, thinking back, it feels as if the memory is dusted with a thin layer of sugar glaze. A gentle lick, and it would melt away. But why, when the memories are so sweet, do my eyes uncontrollably sting and burn? I wipe away the tears at the corners of my eyes with force. In my sight, the photo of my mother and me comes back into focus. This picture was taken after we played together until dark, utterly exhausted, and she pulled me in for the shot. That day, I was very tired, almost falling asleep while the photo was being taken. She gently patted my face, soothing me softly to hold on a little longer and open my eyes first. The photo studio owner smiled and said, "Even if the little girl is too sleepy to open her eyes, she's still adorable." But she stubbornly insisted I open my eyes again and again. At the time, I didn't understand. I thought it was just ordinary. I pressed that light photo against my chest. Through my fingers, I felt the strong beat of my own heart, and I couldn't help but cry again. My name is Zoe. This name was given to me by my mother. Growing up, I wondered countless times what my name truly meant. After all, at the beginning, she never intended to pour so much time, energy, and emotion into a useless girl. This question, I never had the chance to ask my mother, and later I pondered it countless times in solitude. Just like I often wondered whether my mother loved me. And now, I have finally grown into an adult just like her, and I finally understand everything. She was afraid she couldn't protect me, and also afraid I couldn't fight Victor. It wasn't that she didn't love me once, but that she didn't dare to love. I opened my eyes and gently put the photo down. Outside the window, it had started to rain at some unknown moment, as if someone was quietly pouring out their heart. I leaned against the bed, quietly watching the raindrops trace down the curtains, linking together into a continuous curtain of rain. Suddenly, it felt like I had returned to childhood. The air around was so still, as if in the next moment, that person would quietly push open the door and tuck the blanket around me. Raising my hand, I could smell the bluebell scent on her sleeve. I couldn't help but lift the corner of my mouth. Mom, I can finally take back everything that belongs to us. Finally, live up to your trust.